You ever get fined $72,000 for grass? The smell of hot dust and dry hay hit me the second I stepped out of my truck. The engine ticked behind me, metal cooling under the Texas sun. I hadn't even closed the door yet when I saw her, standing right in the middle of my driveway like she owned it. Clipboard tucked under one arm. Sunglasses sharp as a blade. Victoria Hale didn't wave. She didn't smile. She just walked straight up and pressed a stack of papers into my chest like it was a verdict already signed. The pages were warm, fresh off a printer. You're late, she said. Her voice was tight, controlled. The kind of voice that expected obedience before explanation. I looked down at the top sheet. Bold letters. HOA violation notice. Then the number hit me. $72,000. I actually let out a short breath. Not a laugh. Not yet. Just air leaving my lungs as I read it again. Past dues, she added, adjusting her sunglasses like the sun itself answered to her. Accumulated violations. Non-compliant land use. Improper vegetation management. I glanced past her. The ranch stretched out behind me. Acres of open land. Rolling dry grass. A fence line that hadn't been touched in years. Quiet. Still. Mine. I just bought this place yesterday, I said. My voice came out calm. Maybe too calm. She tilted her head. Not confused. Amused. That doesn't matter, she replied. The land carries the violations. And now so do you. A pickup slowed down on the road behind her. Someone inside was watching. Of course they were. Small communities always watched. Always listened. Always picked sides before the story even started. I flipped through the pages. Each one worse than the last. Fines stacked on fines. Daily penalties. Warnings I had never received. Rules I had never agreed to. All of it printed clean and official. Like truth. You'll need to pay within 10 days, she continued. Or we escalate. Liens. Legal action. Possible seizure. The word hung there for a second. Seizure. Like she'd been waiting to say it all morning. I looked up at her. Really looked this time. Perfect posture. Perfect tone. Absolute certainty. She believed every word coming out of her mouth. That was the part most people got wrong about people like her. It wasn't greed. It wasn't even power. It was certainty. The dangerous kind. The kind that didn't question where authority came from. Only how far it could stretch. I nodded slowly. Let the silence sit between us. The wind picked up just enough to move the top layer of dust across the driveway. I could hear a loose hinge on the old barn creak in the distance. All right, I said. Simple. Easy. Like I was already doing the math in my head and losing. Her lips pressed into something that almost looked like satisfaction. She turned, already done with me. Already moving on to whatever came next on her list. Welcome to the community, Mr. Mercer, she said over her shoulder. We have standards here. I watched her walk back to her SUV. Clean. Polished. Parked halfway onto my land without asking. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because the truth was, this wasn't about grass. It never is. And what she didn't know was that she had just influenced the wrong man. I stood there for a long second after her SUV disappeared down the road. The dust she kicked up hung in the air like a warning that refused to settle. $72,000. For grass. I looked back at the papers in my hand. Clean ink. Official language. Signatures printed like authority had weight. I walked toward the house slowly. Boots crunching gravel. The porch creaked when I stepped on it. Old wood. Untouched for years. Just the way I wanted it. Inside, the air smelled like dry timber and faint motor oil. I set the papers down on the kitchen counter and spread them out one by one. Dates. Violations. Penalties. Every line told a story I had never lived. Notices supposedly sent months ago. Fines stacking weekly. Even a certified letter receipt with a signature that was not mine. I leaned closer. Studied it. The signature was sloppy. Rushed. Fake. I let out a quiet breath. Not anger. Not yet. Just confirmation. This was not a mistake. This was a system. I pulled out my phone and opened the county property records. Signal was weak but steady enough. The listing loaded. Parcel number. Acreage. Ownership history. I already knew what I would find. But I checked anyway. The ranch had been sitting outside any HOA boundary for over 40 years. No annexation. No recorded agreement. No shared infrastructure contract. Nothing. Clean. Isolated. Independent. I tapped the screen again. Zoomed out. The neighboring subdivision wrapped around the north and east sides like a tightening fist. Perfectly planned streets. Identical rooftops. Neat lawns cut to regulation height. And right at the edge. My land. The only piece that did not belong. I smiled a little then. Not because it was funny. Because it made sense. I walked to the window and looked out toward the fence line. There were small markers I had noticed earlier. Fresh paint. New posts. Subtle. Easy to miss unless you knew what to look for. They had been creeping the boundary inward. Inch by inch. Month by month. Paperwork to match the story. Violations to justify control. And now me. The new owner. The perfect target. No history. No context. Just a name on a deed and a bill too big to question. I picked up the top sheet again and read the deadline. 10 days. That was generous. Almost polite. I turned it over. There it was. The HOA management company listed at the bottom. Hale Community Services. Of course. I walked back outside. The heat hit harder now. The kind that pressed against your chest. I walked along the fence line slowly. Counting steps. Measuring distance in my head. The old survey markers were still there. Buried but not gone. Steel pins driven deep into the ground decades ago. I knew exactly where to look. Because I had seen this before. Not here. But close enough. Different town. Same playbook. I stopped where one of the new posts stood. Fresh wood. Bright stain. Set just a few feet too far in. I nudged it with my boot. Solid. Recently placed. Someone had invested time into this lie. That made it expensive. I liked expensive mistakes. I pulled my phone out again. This time I opened a different file. Not public records. Not listings. Something older. Private. The original infrastructure agreements tied to the land beneath this entire area. Water access. Road easements. Utility rights. All of it traced back decades. All of it tied to one name. Mine. I closed the file and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The wind picked up again. Stronger this time. Carrying the faint sound of lawn equipment from the subdivision. Perfect lawns. Perfect rules. Perfect control. I looked back toward the road where her SUV had disappeared earlier. Then down at the violation notice still in my hand. 72,000, I said quietly to myself. The number felt different now. Smaller. Manageable. Because what she thought was a bill was actually a trigger. And what she did not understand yet was that this land did not just sit outside her rules. It sat underneath everything she controlled. I did not sleep that night. Not because of the fine. Not because of her voice. It was the pattern that kept replaying in my head. Every line on those papers was built to look real. But none of it could exist without cooperation from the ground beneath it. And that was the part they never checked. I sat at the kitchen table with a single lamp on. The rest of the house stayed dark. Quiet. The kind of silence that lets you hear every small detail. Papers shifting. Wood settling. Wind brushing against the walls. I opened my laptop and pulled up the full archive. Old contracts. County filings. Water access rights dating back nearly 80 years. The original ranch was not just land. It was infrastructure. Buried pipelines. Shared wells. Access corridors that fed everything built after it. The subdivision next door did not create its own system. It tapped into this one. Quietly. Legally. Permanently. I scrolled through signatures. Names long gone. Agreements that never expired. Clauses that most people would skip right past. But not me. I stopped at one section and read it again slowly. Exclusive Maintenance Authority. Primary control over flow regulation. Transferable only by deed holder. I leaned back in my chair. Let that settle. Then I looked at the date on the document. It matched the original survey pins outside. The same ones buried under decades of dust and assumptions. I closed the laptop halfway. Not fully. Just enough to dim the screen. My phone buzzed against the table. A new message. Unknown number. I opened it. A photo. My fence line. The new posts. Taken from the road. Followed by a single line. You should fix that before the next inspection. I stared at it for a second. Then I smiled. Not because it was threatening. Because it confirmed something I already knew. They were watching. Which meant they were invested. An investment always has a cost. I stood up and walked back outside. The air had cooled slightly. The sky stretched wide and clear. No city lights to block it. Just stars and open land. I walked straight to the same fence post I checked earlier. This time I knelt down. Brushed away dirt with my hand. Slow. Careful. The soil was loose. Recently disturbed. It did not take long before I felt it. Metal. Cold. Solid. The original survey pin. Still exactly where it had always been. I cleared around it fully. Measured the distance to the new post. 3 feet inside my boundary. Not an accident. Not even close. I stood up and looked toward the subdivision again. Lights in every window. Perfect rows. Perfect order. Built on borrowed ground they barely understood. I pulled out my phone again. This time I made a call. It rang once. Then twice. Then a voice answered. Calm. Professional. The kind of voice that does not ask unnecessary questions. This is Daniel Mercer, I said. I need you to pull activation protocols on the North Ridge water grid. There was a brief pause. Not confusion. Recognition. Are you sure you want to initiate that? He asked. I looked down at the violation notice still folded in my other hand. The number stared back at me like it still mattered. Yes, I said. Simple. Final. It's time we verify who actually controls access. I ended the call and slipped the phone back into my pocket. The wind moved through the grass again. Low and steady. Carrying a faint hum from the direction of the subdivision. Pumps. Systems. Pressure lines working quietly beneath everything they built. I turned and walked back toward the house. Slow. Measured. Because the truth was, this was never about proving them wrong. It was about letting them prove it themselves. And what they did not realize yet was that the ground they stood on was about to start asking questions they could not afford to answer. The next morning started too quiet. No wind. No hum. No distant lawn equipment. Just still air sitting heavy over everything. I noticed it the moment I stepped outside. Something was missing. Not broken. Not loud. Just absent. I walked toward the fence line again, boots pressing into dry dirt that had not shifted overnight. The subdivision looked the same at first glance. Same houses. Same cars parked in driveways. Same trimmed edges. But then I saw the first sign. A man standing near his garage with a garden hose in his hand. The water trickled out weak. Uneven. He shook the nozzle like that would fix it. It did not. I kept walking. Another house. Sprinklers half on. spitting instead of spraying. The pattern was subtle, but it was spreading. I checked my phone. No missed calls yet. That meant the system was still adjusting. Still trying to compensate. I leaned against the fence and watched. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. A truck pulled up near the entrance to the subdivision. Utility logo on the side. 2 workers stepped out. One of them walked straight to a control box near the curb. Opened it. Looked inside. Then looked around like the answer might be hiding in plain sight. It never is. My phone buzzed. I did not rush to answer. I let it ring once more before picking up. Same voice from last night. Calm. Precise. We initiated the verification sequence, he said. Pressure variance detected across all secondary lines. I watched as one of the workers tapped the side of the control box again. Frustrated. Primary control is not responding to their override requests, he continued. They are attempting manual redistribution now. I nodded even though he could not see me. And the result? I asked. There was a brief pause. Not hesitation. Calculation. They are losing stability across the grid, he said. If they continue forcing the system, they risk a full shutdown of service zones. I looked out over the houses again. More people stepping outside now. Checking hoses. Looking at sprinklers. Phones already in their hands. Calling someone. Anyone. I could almost hear the confusion building before the sound even reached me. Maintain current settings, I said. Do not escalate. Understood, he replied. The line went quiet. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and stayed right where I was. Watching. Because this was the moment most people rushed. The moment they revealed intent. I did not. I waited. 15 minutes later, the first SUV came speeding down the road. Clean. Polished. Familiar. It stopped hard near the entrance. Door opened fast. Victoria stepped out with her phone pressed tight against her ear. Her posture was different now. Not uncertain. But not in control either. She paced once. Then twice. Then she spotted me. Standing still by the fence. Exactly where I had been. Her eyes locked onto mine from across the distance. She ended the call mid-sentence and started walking toward me. Fast. Gravel shifting under her heels. What did you do? She demanded before she even reached the driveway. No greeting. No pretense. Just accusation? I did not move. I did not step forward. I let her close the distance herself. I checked my property lines, I said. Simple. Measured. Her jaw tightened. This is not a coincidence, she snapped. We have a system failure affecting the entire community. I tilted my head slightly. Looked past her toward the houses again. Then back at her. That sounds expensive, I said. Quiet. Calm. The words landed harder than if I had raised my voice. She took another step closer. Close enough now to see the tension in her hands. The way she gripped her phone like it might give her answers if she held it tight enough. If you think you can interfere with our operations, she started, her voice sharper now. You are making a very serious mistake. I let a small pause sit between us. Just long enough. Then I glanced down at the folded violation notice still in my hand. Then back up at her. No, I said softly. The mistake already happened. The wind picked up again. Light at first. Then steady. Carrying with it the sound of distant voices rising across the subdivision. Confusion turning into urgency. Systems that always work suddenly asking questions no one there could answer. And standing right in front of me, the one person who thought she controlled all of it, was realizing she never actually did. She froze for half a second. Not long enough for anyone else to notice. But I did. It was the exact moment confidence turns into calculation. Victoria straightened her posture again like she could rebuild control just by standing taller. You need to fix this immediately, she said. Her voice was louder now. Sharper. Designed to sound like authority instead of asking for help. I did not respond right away. I let the sounds behind her grow louder. Car doors opening. Voices carrying across the street. Someone calling out that their water pressure was gone completely. Another voice asking if anyone else was having the same issue. The system was not failing yet. But it was close enough to feel real. Fix what? I asked finally. Calm. Direct. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Do not play games, she snapped. We know you did something. I glanced down at the papers in my hand again. Then slowly folded them once. Then again. Neat. Controlled. I have not done anything to your community, I said. I have only verified what belongs to me. She took a step closer. Close enough now that the distance between us felt intentional. Like she was trying to force the conversation into her space. Your property is subject to our regulations, she said. You are interfering with shared infrastructure. That word again. Shared. I let that sit for a moment. Then I looked past her shoulder toward the subdivision. A line of vehicles was forming near the entrance now. Utility trucks. One county vehicle pulling in behind them. Lights off. No urgency yet. But that would change. It always does. Shared requires agreement, I said. Show me the agreement. Her mouth opened slightly. Then closed. She did not have it. Not because it did not exist. But because she had never needed to prove it before. The system had always just worked. People had always just complied. Until now. Her phone rang again. She glanced at it. Ignored it. Then it rang again immediately. This time she answered. What? She said, already frustrated. I could hear a voice on the other end. Fast. Panicked. Not controlled like hers. She turned slightly away from me, but not enough to hide the reaction on her face. That is not possible, she said. Reset the valves. A pause. Then her expression shifted again. Subtle. But deeper this time. What do you mean it is locked? She asked. I looked down at my boots. Then back up at her. She ended the call abruptly. Turned back to me. The certainty was still there. But now it was cracking around the edges. If you are blocking access to the water system, she said, slower now, choosing each word carefully, you are exposing yourself to severe liability. I nodded once. I agree, I said. Unauthorized access to a privately controlled system can be very expensive. The words landed differently this time. Not like a challenge. Like a statement she had not considered before. Behind her, one of the utility workers was now on the phone as well. Walking in tight circles near the control box. Another one was trying to open a secondary panel further down the street. None of it was working. Because none of it belonged to them the way they thought it did. Victoria followed my gaze for a moment. Then looked back at me. Really looked this time. Not at a homeowner. Not at a problem to solve. But at something she did not fully understand yet. Who are you? She asked. The question came out quieter than everything else she had said so far. That was new. I took a slow breath. Let the air settle before answering. I am the owner of record for this land, I said. And the controlling party for the infrastructure agreements tied to it. Her expression did not change immediately. It took a second. Then another. For the meaning to settle in. That is not possible, she said again. But this time it sounded different. Not like denial. Like hope. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Opened the same file from last night. Turned the screen toward her. Old documents. Official seals. Names tied to decades of recorded authority. Mine at the bottom. Clean. Current. Unchallenged. She stared at it. Silent. The sounds behind her kept building. Louder now. More urgent. Because the system they trusted without question was no longer answering to them. And for the first time since she stepped onto my property, Victoria Hale was standing in a situation she could not control. She did not move for a moment. The papers on my phone reflected in her sunglasses. Old contracts. County seals. Signatures that carried weight far beyond a neighborhood committee. The wind shifted again. Stronger now. Carrying more voices from behind her. Not calm voices anymore. Frustration was turning into pressure. And pressure always finds the weakest point first. "This does not change anything," she said finally. But her voice did not match the words. It was lower. Slower. Like she was testing each sentence before letting it out. I slid my phone back into my pocket. "It changes everything," I said. Simple. Not aggressive. Just true. A man from the subdivision jogged up behind her. Mid-40s. Polo shirt. Phone pressed to his ear. He stopped when he saw me. Then looked at her. "Victoria, the entire South Block just lost pressure," he said. "They are saying the system is not responding at all." She did not turn around. "We are handling it," she replied quickly. Too quickly. He hesitated. Looked between us again. Then stepped back, unsure which authority mattered more in that moment. That hesitation spread faster than any system failure. I could see it already. People watching from their driveways. Phones out. Conversations starting. Questions building. And no clear answer from the one person who always had one. Victoria finally turned her head slightly toward the man. "Call the emergency contractor," she said. "Tell them we need immediate override access." He nodded and moved away fast. Like action alone could fix something he did not understand. She faced me again. "You are creating a situation that will cost this community a lot of money," she said. "If services fail, you will be held responsible." I let out a slow breath. The kind that steadies the moment. "No," I said. "I am exposing a situation that already exists." Her eyes locked onto mine. Searching. Measuring. Trying to find a way to push past what she was seeing. "You think this gives you leverage," she said. "But all you have done is make yourself visible." I nodded once. That was the point. The words landed clean. No. Extra weight. Just fact. Another truck pulled up near the entrance. This one marked with a private contractor logo. 2 more men stepped out. They moved quickly to the main control panel. Tools ready. Confidence built on routine. They opened the panel. Looked inside. Then one of them paused. His shoulders shifted slightly. He leaned in closer. Checked again. Then stepped back. "It is locked at the source," he called out. "We do not have authority to override this." The sentence carried across the open space. Clear enough for everyone nearby to hear. Authority. That word again. But this time it was not coming from Victoria. It was coming from the system itself. She turned toward them sharply. "Override it manually," she ordered. One of the men shook his head. "We cannot," he said. "This is tied to a primary control agreement. We need authorization from the controlling party." Silence followed that. Not total silence. But the kind where every other sound fades into the background. Because one sentence just changed the entire structure of power in that space. Victoria did not speak immediately. She did not need to. Everyone there was already doing the math. Looking at her. Then at me. Then back again. Trying to understand how the roles had just shifted without warning. I reached into my pocket again. Not for my phone this time. For the folded violation notice. I held it up slightly between us. $72,000, I said quietly. "That was the number, right?" Her jaw tightened again. But she did not answer. She did not need to. "You tried to charge me for rules that do not apply to my land," I continued. "While using infrastructure you do not control." The wind picked up stronger now. Carrying the sound of more residents gathering. More questions. More pressure. This is not how this works, she said. But it sounded different now. Not like a command. Like a statement she was trying to convince herself of. I nodded slowly. You are right, I said. It is not. I let a brief pause settle between us. Then I looked past her at the entire subdivision. Every house. Every system connected beneath it. Every assumption they had built their control on. This is how it works, I said. And for the first time since this started, she understood that whatever came next was not something she could stop. The crowd started forming faster than anyone wanted to admit. Not a panic. Not yet. But enough people standing outside their homes, phones pressed to their ears, looking toward the same control box like it held answers it could not give. The air felt heavier now. Not from heat. From uncertainty. And uncertainty spreads faster than any system failure ever could. Victoria stayed where she was for a moment longer. Then she turned away from me and walked toward the contractors. Quick steps. Controlled, but no longer confident. I need that system restored immediately, she said. One of the men shook his head again. We told you already, he replied. We do not have authority here. This is not your network to override. That sentence hit harder this time. Because now there were witnesses. People hearing it. People processing it. The structure she relied on was cracking in public. She lowered her voice, but I could still hear it. There has to be a bypass, she insisted. There is always a bypass. The contractor hesitated, then glanced over at me. Just for a second. But it was enough. That small look shifted everything. Victoria followed his gaze. Slowly. Then turned back toward me. This time, she did not walk fast. She approached carefully. Like she was stepping into a situation she did not fully control anymore. What do you want? She asked. Straight to the point now. No tone. No authority layered over it. Just a question. I let the silence sit for a second before answering. The wind moved through the dry grass again. The same sound from yesterday. But now it carried tension instead of calm. I want accuracy, I said. I want the boundaries respected. I want your organization to operate within the limits of what it actually controls. Her eyes stayed on mine, searching for something else behind the words. Something simpler. Something she could push against. But there was nothing there except clarity. And if we agree to that? She asked. I nodded once. Then the system stabilizes. Another pause. Longer this time. Behind her. More residents were gathering near the street. Some whispering. Some watching openly now. The situation had moved past private disagreement. This was visible. Measurable. And expensive. Victoria exhaled slowly. You could have just said that from the beginning, she said. There it was. The attempt to reset the narrative. To make this look like a misunderstanding instead of a power grab. I shook my head slightly. No, I said. You would not have listened. That landed. Because she knew it was true. She had not come here to ask questions yesterday. She had come to enforce something she believed she already owned. Her phone rang again. She answered this time without looking away from me. Yes, she said. Listening. Her expression shifted slightly. Then again. How much? She asked. A pause. Then her jaw tightened. That is not acceptable, she said. The contractor nearby glanced over again. Waiting. Measuring. Because now even the numbers were starting to surface. I watched her carefully. The way her posture adjusted. The way her control was slipping in small, precise increments. We are looking at escalating costs across multiple service zones. She continued into the phone. Contain it. She ended the call and lowered the phone slowly. The noise around us kept building. More people. More voices. More pressure. I took a single step forward. Not aggressive. Just enough to close the space between us by an inch. This does not have to get worse, I said quietly. But it will. Very quickly. Because the longer the system stays unstable, the more it costs. Not just in repairs. In liability. Her eyes flickered for just a second. That word again. Liability. It had weight now. Real weight. Not theoretical. Not something printed on a notice and handed to someone else. You are putting the entire community at risk, she said. But the accusation did not land the same way anymore. I held her gaze steady. No, I said. I am showing them exactly who has been putting them at risk this entire time. The wind pushed harder through the street now, carrying with it the sound of a system under stress. Not broken. Not yet. But close enough that everyone could feel it. And standing right there in the center of it, the person who thought she controlled everything was realizing that control was never hers to begin with. The first official notice did not come from Victoria. It came from a third party. That was when everyone realized this was no longer contained inside a neighborhood dispute. It arrived by email. Then by certified mail. Then by a posted notice at the entrance gate. A formal advisory from a regional infrastructure authority. Temporary service instability. Ongoing jurisdictional review. Potential reassessment of utility control boundaries. The language was careful. But the impact was immediate. Residents started asking questions out loud now. Not quietly behind closed doors. Not politely during association meetings. They wanted to know who actually controlled their water. Who controlled their access roads. Who had the legal right to build them. And most importantly, who had exposed them to risk without telling them. Victoria stood near the gate when the notice was posted. I watched from a distance. She read it once. Then again. Slower the second time. Her hand tightened around the paper. Someone stepped up beside her. A homeowner. Middle-aged. Calm, but direct. What does this mean for us? He asked. She did not answer immediately. That hesitation said more than any explanation could. It means the situation is being reviewed, she said finally. The man did not move. Reviewed by who? He asked. She opened her mouth. Then closed it again. Because the answer was no longer simple. It was no longer something she controlled. And the people around her could feel that shift. Phones came out. Calls were made. Some residents contacted attorneys. Others reached out to insurance providers. A few started digging into public records. The kind that most people never look at until something goes wrong. Titles. Easements. Utility rights. Corporate filings. The deeper they looked, the more complicated the picture became. And the more exposed the association appeared. I walked slowly toward the gate. Not rushing. No reason to. The process had already started. Victoria noticed me before I said anything. Of course she did. Now she watched me the way someone watches a problem they cannot ignore anymore. Did you know this was coming? She asked. Her voice was steady, but thinner now. I stopped a few feet away. Yes, I said. No reason to pretend otherwise. That honesty hit harder than any denial would have. You set this up, she said. Not loud. Just certain. I tilted my head slightly. No, I replied. I documented what was already happening. Then I made sure the right people saw it. Another resident stepped closer. Then another. Not aggressively. Just drawn in by gravity. By the sense that answers were finally within reach. Are we liable for any of this? Someone asked from the side. That question changed everything. Because now the concern was not rules or violations. It was money. Real money. Long-term consequences. I looked at the group. Then back at Victoria. That depends, I said, on how the association represented its authority, and whether those representations were accurate. The silence that followed was heavy. Because everyone understood what that meant. If the association had overstepped. If it had enforced rules beyond its legal reach. If it had collected fees it was not entitled to collect. Then this was not just a misunderstanding. It was a liability chain. And liability chains do not stay small. Victoria shook her head slightly. This is being blown out of proportion, she said. But even she did not sound convinced anymore. One of the contractors approached again. This time with a tablet in hand. He showed her something on the screen. A map. Layered boundaries. Colored zones. Clear lines that did not match the association's claims. She stared at it. Then looked up at me. And in that moment, the last piece of the illusion broke. You own that grid, she said quietly. It was not a question anymore. I nodded once. Around us, the residents reacted in waves. Confusion first. Then realization. Then concern. Because ownership changes everything. Control becomes real. Authority becomes measurable. And mistakes become expensive. I took a slow breath and looked at the community spread out behind the gate. Neatly maintained homes. Clean streets. Carefully enforced rules. Built on assumptions that were never verified. This can still be resolved, I said. But not the way it was handled before. Victoria did not respond. She could not. Because for the first time since this started, she was no longer the one setting the terms. And everyone around her could see it clearly now. The official meeting was scheduled within 48 hours. Not optional. Not informal. A full emergency session with legal counsel present. Notices were sent to every homeowner. Attendance was higher than anyone had seen in years. Because now it was not about landscaping rules or parking violations. It was about exposure. Financial exposure. Legal exposure. And the kind of numbers that could change lives. I arrived early. Took a seat near the back. No need to stand at the front. Not yet. Victoria stood at the head table with two attorneys beside her. Stacks of documents were spread out. Laptops open. Phones on silent but lighting up every few seconds. The room filled quickly. Voices low. Tense. Focused. When the meeting started, there was no small talk. One of the attorneys stood and addressed the room. We are currently reviewing the association's operational authority in relation to external infrastructure systems, he said. Careful words again. But everyone knew what it meant now. A resident raised his hand immediately. Are we going to be billed for this? He asked. Direct. No hesitation. The attorney paused. Then answered. There is potential liability depending on the findings of the review. That was enough. The room shifted instantly. Conversations broke out in low bursts. People turning to each other. Doing quick math in their heads. Worst-case scenarios forming fast. Victoria tried to regain control. We are working to resolve this efficiently, she said. There is no need to panic. But the word panic had already entered the room. And once it is there, it does not leave easily. Another homeowner stood up. Did you collect fees for services you did not control? He asked. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. Victoria looked toward her attorney. He leaned in and whispered something. She nodded once. Then looked back at the room. We operated under established documentation, she said. Documentation that is now under review. That answer did not calm anyone. It made things worse. Because it confirmed uncertainty at the highest level of control. I stood up slowly. Not rushed. Just deliberate. The room quieted in pieces as people noticed. Some recognized me now. Others only knew me as the person tied to the situation. Either way, attention shifted. There is a path forward, I said. Clear. Steady. No raised voice. Just enough to carry across the room. Victoria's eyes locked on me immediately. The attorneys turned as well. Measuring. Calculating. I continued. The infrastructure can be stabilized permanently. The boundaries can be clarified, and the liability can be contained before it escalates further. Someone from the side spoke up. How? I looked around the room once, then answered. By restructuring control under a single verified authority. One that actually owns and maintains the systems in question. A pause. Then I added the part they needed to hear. That authority is already in place. The room went still. Not silent from confusion. Silent from realization building in real time. Victoria shook her head slightly. You are suggesting a transfer of control, she said. I am stating a fact, I replied. Control was never here to begin with. One of the attorneys leaned forward. And what are the terms of this resolution? He asked. There it was. The shift from denial to negotiation. I met his gaze. Immediate cessation of unauthorized enforcement actions, I said. Full audit of collected fees tied to external systems. And a cooperative agreement moving forward under verified jurisdiction. The numbers behind those words were large. Everyone in the room knew it. Refunds. Legal costs. Compliance restructuring. It added up fast. The association was not built to absorb that kind of impact easily. Victoria sat down slowly. The posture change said everything. Not defeated, but no longer in control. If we do not agree? She asked. I answered without hesitation. Then the review continues. And the costs scale with it. No threat in the tone. Just reality. Because systems do not wait. Investigations do not pause. And liability does not shrink over time. It grows. The room held that truth for a long second. Then another. Finally, one of the board members spoke quietly. We need to vote. And just like that, the entire structure that had been enforced so confidently days ago was reduced to a decision under pressure. A decision shaped by facts that had always been there. Just never challenged until now. I remained standing as the board prepared to cast their votes. Not moving. Not pushing. Because the outcome was already clear. The power had shifted long before this meeting started. This was just the moment everyone else finally saw it.